The snow fell in silent sheets, thick and merciless, swallowing the moonlight until the world turned white and endless. Ilara's boots sank deep with every step, her breath burning in her chest as if the air itself had teeth. Behind her, the iron gates of her family's estate closed with a final clang, a sound that split the last thread of belonging she had left. "Do not come back, Ilara," her father's voice echoed in her mind. "You are no longer of this house." Those words replayed over and over as she stumbled through the storm. Her cloak was thin, her fingers numb, and the night stretched endlessly ahead. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stop. The wolves would smell weakness if she rested. The snow would bury her if she didn't move. Once she had believed in the safety of stone walls and warm fires. Now she walked into death's embrace because of a secret she barely understood, a mark on her shoulder that glowed faintly under the moonlight. It had appeared the night she turned 18, shimmering like silver frost. Her father's horror had been immediate. Her mother had wept but said nothing. Within hours the servants dragged her to the stables, handed her a torn cloak, and shut the gates. Ilara wiped her face with trembling fingers. "They didn't even let me explain," she whispered to no one. The forest loomed ahead, black trees heavy with snow, branches bending low like silent witnesses. The wind howled through the pines, carrying whispers that sounded too much like voices. Her heart raced. Somewhere deep in those woods, stories said, lived the wolves of the north, creatures cursed by the moon, half man and half beast, ruled by a ruthless alpha king. Children grew up fearing his name. Women prayed never to catch his gaze. Ilara shivered, her thoughts scattering like dry leaves. "Better to freeze," she muttered, "than to be torn apart." Still she moved forward. The storm grew crueler, pushing her to her knees. Her vision blurred, tears froze on her lashes. She clutched her cloak tighter, but the cold slipped through like a knife. The world tilted. Somewhere in the distance a wolf howled, low and haunting, carried on the wind. She froze. Another howl answered, closer this time. Her pulse quickened. She looked over her shoulder, searching the white void, but there was nothing, only the swirling storm and the whisper of snow. Panic clawed at her ribs. She stumbled faster, but her legs betrayed her. The cold numbed everything, first her hands, then her feet, then her thoughts. When she finally collapsed, the snow welcomed her softly. Her body trembled once, then stilled. "Maybe this is peace," she thought faintly. "Maybe this is how it ends." But as her eyelids fluttered shut, she felt something, a strange warmth brushing against her skin. It wasn't the snow, nor the memory of her lost home. It was something alive, something powerful, something watching. A shadow moved through the storm. Heavy footsteps crunched closer. A deep voice, smooth and commanding, broke through the wind. "Who dares lie half dead on my lands?" Ilara wanted to answer, but her lips wouldn't move. The warmth grew stronger. A gloved hand touched her cheek, rough yet careful. The scent of pine, smoke, and something wilder surrounded her. "She's burning up," the voice murmured, closer now. "A human? No. There's something else." She tried to open her eyes, to see the face behind that voice, but everything went dark. As consciousness slipped away, she thought she heard him speak again, softer this time, almost a growl beneath his breath. "Mine." The storm swallowed the word, but the sound of it lingered inside her, bright and burning, a spark that refused to die. And if you've ever believed that no soul should face the cold alone, stay with me through this story. Sometimes the frost hides not death, but destiny waiting to be found. The night air carried the wild scent of snow, blood, and pine. King Lucien moved silently through the frozen woods, the moonlight tracing silver across his armor. His wolf stirred beneath his skin, restless and alert. He hadn't meant to hunt tonight. Royalty didn't hunt under storms, but something had pulled him from the castle halls, a whisper deep in his blood that refused to quiet. He crouched, pressing a gloved hand to the snow. The trail was faint, but it was there. A human scent, fading and fragile, laced with something else, something ancient. His wolf rumbled in the back of his mind, urging him onward. "She shouldn't be here," Lucien muttered, his breath forming clouds in the air. No one crosses this forest and lives. He followed the scent through the trees. Branches bowed low under heavy snow, their silence absolute. The storm had weakened, leaving only the sound of wind sliding through pine needles. His heart beat faster with each step. There was danger in this pull, in this instinct clawing at his chest, but there was also recognition. When he found her, she was little more than a shadow against the white. Her body lay curled beneath a drift, her hair tangled with frost, her lips blue. She looked like a fallen spirit abandoned by heaven itself. For a heartbeat, Lucien thought she was dead. Then, faintly, he saw her breath fog the air. His wolf lunged forward in his mind. Mine. Lucien froze. The word wasn't his thought, not truly. It came from the deeper part of him, the primal, ancient voice that ruled the bond between mates. But that was impossible. She was human. He knelt beside her, brushing the snow from her face. Her skin burned beneath his fingertips. "You're freezing," he murmured, surprised at the gentleness in his own voice. "What foolish human wanders into my forest?" She stirred, a soft sound escaping her throat, barely a whisper. Her lashes fluttered, revealing eyes so pale they almost matched the snow. Fear flickered in them, but also something else, trust maybe, or recognition. Lucien swallowed hard. The scent around her deepened, no longer just human. Beneath the cold and the blood he smelled moonlight, if moonlight had a scent, soft, wild, and ancient. The same power that ran through his veins pulsed faintly through hers. He gathered her in his arms. She was light, far too light. His cloak wrapped around her, and still she trembled. "You won't die out here," he said quietly. "Not tonight." The wind rose again, wailing through the trees as if the forest itself disapproved. Lucien ignored it. His wolf prowled beneath his skin, impatient, protective. Every instinct screamed to keep her close. When he reached the edge of his territory, the guards straightened, eyes widening. One of them stepped forward, his voice uncertain. "My king. Who is she?" Lucien's gaze hardened. "She's under my protection," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Prepare the healer. No one touches her." The guard hesitated. "But, sire, if she's human, do as I say." His growl rumbled low, sharp enough to cut through the night. The guards scattered without another word. Lucien shifted the weight of the woman in his arms. Her head rested against his chest, her breath barely there. Each heartbeat of hers seemed weaker than the last, yet the bond thrummed stronger with every step he took toward the fortress. He didn't understand it. He didn't want to. But as he crossed the bridge to the great gates, he felt something stir deep inside, the certainty that his life, his reign, everything he knew, had just changed forever. He glanced down at her once more, brushing a strand of frozen hair from her face. "Who are you?" he whispered. "And why does my soul already know your name?" Above them, the moon broke through the clouds, casting light over the Alpha King, and the woman Fate had dropped into his arms. The scent of her lingered in the air, wild, forbidden, unforgettable. Ilara drifted between waking and darkness, her mind a blur of snow and fever. The first thing she felt was warmth, the kind that seeped through her bones, steady and unfamiliar. Her body no longer shook with cold, but her skin burned. When she tried to move, pain rippled through her muscles, reminding her she was still alive. Voices murmured somewhere nearby. One was calm and commanding, the other soft and uncertain. "She'll live," said the softer voice, a woman's tone touched with awe. "But I've never seen a mark like that before." "Don't speak of it outside this chamber," the man replied, his voice colder than steel. "The council would panic before dawn." Lucien. She remembered that voice, the one she'd heard through the storm, the one that had pulled her back from death. She opened her eyes slowly, blinking against the dim light of the chamber. Furs draped over her body, and fire crackled in the hearth. The air smelled of pine resin, smoke, and something darker, his scent. Her gaze found him near the doorway, tall and still, his eyes gleaming like gold beneath shadow. He looked both regal and dangerous, the kind of man people whispered about in fear, the Alpha King. Lucien turned as if he'd felt her watching. "You're awake." His tone was clipped, but his eyes flickered with something else, relief maybe, or curiosity. Ilara swallowed, her voice rough. "Where am I?" "In the fortress of the Northern Pack," he said simply. "You crossed into my territory during the storm. Most don't survive that mistake." Her lips parted, but no words came. She didn't remember crossing any border. She'd just been running, from her home, from shame, from the curse she carried. Lucien stepped closer, his boots silent on the stone floor. "What were you doing alone in the blizzard?" Ilara hesitated. "I was cast out." The words tasted bitter. "My family. They didn't want me anymore." His brow furrowed, but he didn't press. "You're lucky I found you when I did." "Lucky?" She gave a faint, humorless laugh. "It didn't feel that way when I collapsed in the snow." Something like a smile ghosted across his lips. "You've got spirit." "That's good. You'll need it here." He turned to leave, but she caught the edge of his cloak. "Wait, you said your territory. What are you?" He paused, eyes narrowing. "You already know." The air between them thickened. The firelight flickered, reflecting in his eyes like molten gold. Her heartbeat quickened. She'd heard the stories, men who turned under the moon, beasts that tore through armies. But seeing him now, she realized those tales had never captured the truth. There was power in him, raw and ancient, but also restraint. "You're a werewolf," she said quietly. Lucien didn't deny it. "And you're not entirely human." Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" "The scent," he said, stepping closer. "There's something in your blood. Not wolf, not human, something in between. It's faint, but I can feel it." She shook her head. "You're mistaken." "Am I?" His gaze held hers, unflinching. "The mark on your shoulder, show me." Her hand instinctively covered it beneath the fur blanket. "No." Lucien tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "You don't trust me." "I don't even know you," he nodded once. "Fair." Then he turned to the door. "Rest. The healer will bring you food. When you're strong enough to walk, we'll speak again." Ilara wanted to protest, to demand answers, but her strength faded as quickly as it had come. The room swayed around her, warm and unreal. As the door closed behind him, she let her eyes drift shut again. His voice lingered in her memory, deep, certain, unyielding. And though she didn't understand why, the sound of it made her heart ache in a way that frightened her. Somewhere outside, a wolf howled beneath the moon, and her skin prickled in response. By morning, the snow outside had quieted, leaving the world covered in a fragile, glittering stillness. Inside the stone fortress, that silence was heavy, broken only by whispers that followed Ilara wherever she went. Servants turned their eyes away when she passed. Warriors paused their training to stare, their expressions a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Ilara felt every gaze like a weight on her skin. She kept her head low, clutching the shawl Lucien's healer had given her. The hallways smelled of iron, pine, and smoke, strange and cold, yet oddly grounding. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. When she entered the great hall, the air shifted. Conversations fell silent. At the long table sat Lucien, his presence commanding without effort. Around him were his council members, men and women whose eyes gleamed with the faint gold hue of their wolves. Lucien's gaze met hers instantly. "You're walking already," he said, his tone unreadable. "That's unexpected." Ilara hesitated. "I heal fast." A murmur rippled through the council. One of them, a tall man with a scar running down his jaw, leaned forward. "Humans don't heal like that," he said sharply. "What is she, my king?" Lucien didn't answer. Instead, he gestured for Ilara to come closer. Every instinct in her screamed to run, but she forced her feet to move until she stood before him. He studied her for a long moment before speaking softly. "Show me your shoulder." Her heart pounded. "Hayu said we'd speak later." "This is later." His tone left no room for argument. Slowly she pulled the fabric aside. Gasps broke out across the hall. The mark, the faint crescent scar that had damned her, glowed softly under the torchlight. Silver veins spread outward like threads of moonlight across her skin. One of the elders rose to his feet. "The mark of the moon-bound," he breathed. "It's real." The words sent a chill through the room. Ilara pulled the shawl back up, her cheeks burning. "What does that even mean?" Lucien's expression was unreadable. "It means you carry the touch of the moon goddess herself. It said those marked by her are born to change the fate of wolves." She shook her head. "That's impossible. I'm no one." "My family cast you out because they feared you," he interrupted. "Perhaps they were right to fear what they didn't understand." The scarred councilman stepped forward, his voice sharp. "She shouldn't be here. If she's moonbound, she's dangerous. That kind of power—" Lucien's gaze cut through him like a blade. "I decide what's dangerous in my court." The man backed away, but the tension remained. Ilara felt it pressing against her chest, a living thing. Lucien rose slowly from his chair. "No harm will come to her while she's under my protection. The moon marked her for a reason, and until I know what that reason is, she stays." The council fell silent, but their expressions spoke volumes: fear, doubt, distrust. As Lucien dismissed them, Ilara's thoughts swirled. Power, fate, the moon goddess. She didn't believe in legends, yet she could still feel the faint hum beneath her skin, as if the mark itself was alive. When the last of the council had left, Lucien approached her. His eyes softened, though his voice stayed firm. "They'll test you," he said quietly. "They'll look for weakness. Don't give them any." She met his gaze, uncertain. "And what if I am weak?" Lucien's lips curved just slightly. "Then learn to pretend you're not." Something inside her shifted, a spark of defiance, of strength she didn't know she had. As he turned to leave, she called after him. "Lucien, what happens to those who are moonbound?" He paused, glancing over his shoulder. "They either save us," he said, "or destroy us all." The torches flickered as the words sank in, and for the first time, Ilara wondered which fate awaited her. Days passed, but the tension inside the fortress only grew thicker. Ilara could feel it in every glance, every whispered conversation that stopped the moment she entered a room. The mark on her shoulder had made her a mystery, and mysteries were dangerous in a world ruled by wolves. The morning sun barely reached through the frosted windows of the hall where she sat, watching the warriors train in the courtyard below. Their movements were fast, graceful, almost otherworldly. She envied the strength in them, the belonging. No one had ever looked at her like she belonged anywhere. "Enjoying the view?" The voice startled her. She turned to find Lucien standing behind her, his cloak dusted with snow, his expression unreadable. "I was just watching," she said quietly. "They're stronger than I imagined." "They were born to fight," he replied, stepping closer. "You weren't." Ilara stiffened. "How you think I'm weak?" "I think you're human," he said simply, "and humans break easily." His bluntness stung, but there was no cruelty in it, only honesty. She met his gaze, her chin lifting slightly. "You don't know me well enough to say that." A faint smile tugged at his lips. "Perhaps not." The silence between them felt heavy but not uncomfortable. Ilara turned her eyes back to the courtyard. "They all hate me." "They fear what they don't understand," Lucien said. "That fear keeps them alive." "It must be lonely," she murmured, "ruling through fear." His eyes flickered with something unreadable, pain, perhaps, or regret. "Power doesn't invite friendship, Ilara. It demands obedience." Before she could respond, a sharp laugh echoed from behind. Lady Seraphine stood in the doorway, her golden hair gleaming like a crown, her beauty cold and deliberate. "Your Majesty," she said sweetly, though her gaze never left Ilara. "I didn't realize the king preferred human company these days." Lucien's jaw tightened. "Mind your tone, Seraphine." She tilted her head, smirking. "I only worry for your reputation. The pack is already talking. Saving a human is one thing. Keeping her here is another." Ilara felt her pulse quicken. "I didn't ask to be saved." Seraphine's eyes sharpened. "No, but you seem eager to stay." Before Ilara could speak, Lucien's voice cut through the air. Enough, she's under my protection. The weight of his words silenced even Seraphine's arrogance, but the look she gave Ilara before leaving promised trouble. When the door closed, Ilara exhaled shakily. She hates me. She's angry because I broke an old promise, Lucien said, to take her as my Luna. Ilara blinked. And now she thinks too much, he interrupted. Let her. Ilara wasn't sure why that bothered her, but it did. The idea that the Alpha King had promised himself to someone made her chest ache in a way she couldn't explain. Lucien's gaze softened, studying her face. You shouldn't take her words to heart. You've survived worse. Her lips curved faintly. You don't even know what I've survived. He stepped closer until she could feel the warmth radiating from him. I know enough, he said quietly. You didn't die when the world turned its back on you. That's strength. For a moment, she forgot to breathe. There was something in his tone, respect, perhaps even admiration. Why are you helping me? She whispered. You barely know me. Lucien hesitated. Because something tells me you're meant to be here, and I don't ignore my instincts. Her heart beat faster. Instincts? He held her gaze. The kind that don't lie. For the first time since the snow, Ilara felt something shift, like a door opening inside her chest, letting in light and danger at once. When he finally left, she stood by the window again, watching the snow fall gently over the courtyard. Her reflection in the glass looked different, less fragile, more alive. But as the whispers resumed behind her, she realized that trust, like fire, burned bright and could just as easily destroy. The days that followed were colder than before, though the snow had stopped falling. The fortress pulsed with quiet unrest, rumors spreading faster than the fire in its hearths. Ilara could feel it. Every whisper that carried her name, every stare that lingered too long. They weren't merely curious now. They were waiting for her to make a mistake. Lucien had grown distant. He no longer lingered in the corridors or visited her in the mornings. Instead, his time was consumed by meetings with his beta, Garin, a man with sharp eyes and an expression that spoke of suspicion rather than loyalty. Ilara overheard them once, their voices drifting through the half-open door of the war chamber. She's not what she appears to be, Garin said. You feel it too, don't you? That scent, something unnatural. Lucien's tone was steady, though colder than she'd ever heard it. Unnatural doesn't mean dangerous. It does when it's tied to prophecy, Garin snapped. You can't ignore what she is. The council is already questioning your judgment. There was silence, then Lucien's quiet response. Let them question. Until they bring me proof, she stays. Ilara stepped away before they could sense her, her pulse pounding in her ears. Proof of what? She wondered. That I'm cursed? That I shouldn't be alive? That night, sleep refused to come. Memories she'd fought to bury began to surface, the night her father dragged her to the gate, his voice breaking with fury. You brought shame upon us all. You were never meant to exist. Her mother's sobs, the servant's silence, the sound of snow crunching under her bare feet as the gates closed behind her. She pressed her hands against her face, trying to stop the trembling. The mark on her shoulder tingled faintly beneath her nightgown, as though mocking her with its glow. When morning came, she forced herself to face the day. Avoiding fear was no longer an option. In the courtyard, she found Garin giving orders to a group of scouts. His posture was rigid, his tone clipped. When his gaze met hers, it hardened. Going somewhere? She asked, keeping her voice even. Not that it concerns you, he said flatly. It does if it involves me. Garin gave a humorless smile. Then you should know. The king has ordered us to look into your past, into the family that abandoned you. Her heart stuttered. Why? Because every kingdom has records and yours has a few too many secrets. If there's something we need to know, we'll find it. Before she could respond, he walked away, leaving her cold despite the morning sun. Later, Lucien found her by the old stone fountain. He didn't speak immediately, only studied her as if measuring her strength. You sent them, she said quietly. You sent them to dig up my past. I had to, he replied. This isn't about trust, it's about survival. If the prophecy ties to you, we need to understand how. Ilara's throat tightened. You said you believed me. I said I'd protect you, he corrected. Belief is different. His words cut deeper than she expected. And what happens if they find something you don't like? Lucien hesitated, his golden eyes unreadable. Then we'll decide what to do when the time comes. The silence between them stretched until it became unbearable. Ilara looked away, her voice trembling. You sound like my father. Lucien's jaw tensed. Then your father was a fool. She turned sharply, anger sparking where sorrow had been. At least he didn't pretend to care. For a heartbeat his expression flickered. Hurt, frustration, something too human to name. But he said nothing. When he finally walked away, Ilara was left alone with the sound of the fountain's trickle and the sharp ache in her chest. That night, as she lay awake once more, a thought crept into her mind, a warning, or perhaps a promise. The past never stays buried, and when the truth comes, it demands blood. The night of the winter moon came cloaked in silver light. The entire fortress buzzed with restless energy, wolves preparing for the sacred ceremony that happened only once each year, when the moon hung fullest and closest to the earth. Ilara could feel that energy vibrating through the walls, through the very stones beneath her feet. From her balcony, she watched the courtyard below fill with warriors in dark cloaks, their eyes flashing gold as they waited for the call. The sight made her chest tighten with something between fear and awe. These were Lucien's people, his pack, and tonight they would bear their true forms beneath the moon. A soft knock broke her thoughts. It was a young servant girl, eyes wide with nervousness. The king wishes for you to attend, my lady. You're to stand beside the council during the ceremony. Ilara hesitated. I shouldn't be there. The girl shook her head quickly. He was clear. You're to come. Her pulse raced. She hadn't seen Lucien since their last argument. Part of her wanted to refuse. The other part, the part that still burned with the memory of his voice, couldn't. When she entered the courtyard, every head turned. The murmurs began immediately. She could feel them slicing through her like blades. Why is she here? She doesn't belong. She's cursed. Lucien stood near the great stone altar, tall and commanding in a black cloak. When his gaze found hers, the crowd fell silent. You came, he said simply. You summoned me, she replied, keeping her chin high. He almost smiled. And you obeyed. I wanted to see what kind of madness draws wolves to the moon. Madness? His eyes gleamed with quiet amusement. You'll see soon enough, it's not madness, it's truth. The drums began to beat, slow rhythmic echoing across the mountains. The moon hung directly overhead now, enormous and white, washing the courtyard in light. One by one, the wolves began to shift. Bones reshaped, claws extended, growls filled the air. Ilara gasped as fur rippled through skin, and men turned into beasts of shadow and moonlight. Lucien's cloak dropped to the ground. His eyes glowed like molten gold, his jaw tightening as he fought the change, holding it until the very last heartbeat. Then, with a sound that was half growl, half roar, he gave in. The transformation stole Ilara's breath. He was magnificent, massive, sleek, power radiating from every line of him. The Alpha King. The wolves howled in unison, their voices blending into a haunting chorus that seemed to shake the stars themselves. The sound hit Ilara deep in her chest, something primal stirring awake inside her. She felt the pull of the moon, strong and wild, calling her name. Before she knew it, she stepped forward. The wind whipped around her, carrying whispers she didn't understand. The mark on her shoulder burned, hot and blinding. Pain flared, then dissolved into something electric. Lucien turned toward her, his golden eyes locking onto hers. The rest of the world seemed to vanish. Her lips parted, and without meaning to, she released a sound, soft at first, then louder, a cry that wasn't quite human. It rose through the night, weaving with the howls of the wolves, and when it reached its peak, the entire pack froze. Every head turned toward her. Silence fell, so deep it rang in her ears. The mark on her skin pulsed like a heartbeat, its silver glow visible even through the fabric. Lucien shifted back to his human form, breathless, his gaze fixed on her. "You answered the call," he whispered, half in awe, half in disbelief. "I didn't mean to," she said, trembling. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "The moon doesn't make mistakes." The council exchanged uneasy glances. Some bowed their heads in reverence. Others looked afraid. The air itself felt different, charged, expectant. Lucien reached for her hand but stopped inches away, as though touching her might set the world ablaze. "You shouldn't have been able to do that, Ilara." Her voice shook. "Then what does it mean?" He exhaled slowly. "It means you are one of us now, whether you want to be or not." And as the moonlight bathed them both, the sound of a single wolf's howl broke the silence again. Hers. In the days after the winter moon, nothing felt the same. The wolves no longer whispered behind Ilara's back, they simply stared. Some bowed their heads when she passed, others avoided her entirely. Whatever she had become that night, it had changed everything. Lucien, however, had changed most of all. He no longer sought her out or offered even the faintest smile. His presence in the hall felt colder, heavier, like the weight of a storm waiting to break. When their eyes met, he looked away too quickly, as though afraid of what he might see or feel. Ilara tried to convince herself it didn't matter, that she didn't care, but the lie didn't hold. Every time she caught his scent in the corridors, pine, smoke, and danger, her chest tightened, with something she didn't want to name. One morning she found herself in the training yard, watching the warriors spar. Garin noticed her from across the field. "Come to gloat, Moon-Blessed?" he asked, his tone sharp. She crossed her arms. "You think I asked for this?" "I think you enjoy the attention it brings," he shot back. "You stole the ceremony. The pack talks of nothing else." "I didn't steal anything," he smirked. "Then explain why the king can't look at you without losing control." The words hit harder than she expected. "You're wrong." "Am I?" Garen's eyes glinted. "He's fighting it, but the bond between you burns bright. The moon has chosen, whether either of you like it or not." Before she could respond, Lucien's voice cut through the air. "Enough!" Garin bowed his head instantly, stepping back. "My king—" "Leave us," Lucien said, his tone edged with warning. When Garin was gone, Lucien turned to her. "You shouldn't let him bait you. He thrives on chaos." Ilara met his gaze, refusing to back down. "Is that what this is now, chaos? Whatever happened between us that night?" "Nothing happened," he said quickly, too quickly. "You're lying." Lucien's jaw tightened. "It was the moon. Her power affects all of us, especially those tied by fate." Her heart twisted. "You think that's all it was? Fate's trick?" "I think it's dangerous." She took a step closer. "Dangerous for you or for me?" He looked away, silent. That silence said everything. "You're the Alpha King," she said softly. "You face wars, death, betrayal, and yet you're afraid of me." Lucien's golden eyes flickered back to hers, sharp and conflicted. "You don't understand what it means to be bound by the moon. It takes choice from you. It takes control." "And I've spent my entire life fighting for control." Her breath trembled. "Then fight for it. But don't push me away because you're scared." He laughed bitterly, though there was no humor in it. "You think this is about fear. The moment I give in to that bond, you won't just belong to me, you'll be mine in every sense. And when the King's Luna shares his power, she becomes both weapon and weakness. I won't make you either." His words sank deep, heavy with something that felt like longing disguised as restraint. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him she didn't care about his rules or his crown, but before she could, he turned and walked away. The rest of the day passed in silence, the kind that presses too close. The sky grew darker as clouds gathered above the fortress, mirroring the turmoil inside her. That night, thunder rolled across the mountains, and Ilara stood by her window, watching lightning crackle through the sky. Her reflection stared back at her, eyes brighter than before, the faint glow of the mark shimmering beneath her skin. She whispered into the empty room, "You can't run from this forever, Lucien." Outside, a lone wolf howled in the distance. The sound was raw, mournful, and full of the same ache that now lived inside her. The storm that night felt wrong. The wind howled across the mountains with a feral edge, rattling the fortress gates as if something alive clawed at them from the outside. The guards moved nervously along the walls, their torches flickering in the biting cold. Ilara could sense it, the unease crawling under her skin, the whisper of danger riding on every gust. She stood by the window of her chamber, staring into the blizzard. For hours the snow had fallen too hard, too steady. The forest beyond was swallowed by white, but somewhere within it, she swore she saw shadows moving, fast, deliberate. Wolves, but not Lucien's. Her door burst open. Garen's voice was low and urgent. "Get away from the windows. We're under attack." Her pulse quickened. "By who?" "Rogues," he said. "Dozens of them. They came through the northern pass. Someone must have guided them." "Guided?" Her chest tightened. "You think someone inside—" "Save your breath," he cut in. "The king will handle the fight. You stay here." But the moment he left, Ilara's instinct screamed louder than reason. Stay here? While others bled for her? No, not again. Not like the night her family left her to die. She grabbed the cloak from her bed and ran. The corridor shook with the sounds of battle. Howls, steel, screams. The smell of iron and smoke filled the air. She stumbled into the main hall just as the doors burst open, snow sweeping across the stone floor. Lucien stood there, his sword slick with blood, eyes blazing gold. His voice thundered above the chaos. "Hold the line! Don't let them breach the inner gates." For a moment she was struck by the sheer force of him, the power, the fury. Then she saw movement behind him, a rogue wolf breaking through, teeth bared. "Lucien!" she screamed. He turned, but too late. Ilara darted forward, grabbing the nearest blade from a fallen guard and swinging it with all her strength. The steel connected, slicing across the creature's throat. It collapsed, twitching, before fading into stillness. Lucien stared at her in disbelief. "What are you doing here?" "Helping you," she panted. "You're welcome." His jaw tightened, but before he could reply, a deep growl echoed through the hall. More wolves poured in, bigger, faster, their eyes red with madness. Lucien's soldiers fought fiercely, but they were outnumbered. One of the rogues lunged toward a small figure in the corner, Lucien's younger brother, barely 16. Ilara didn't think, she just moved. She threw herself between them, the blade flashing. Pain tore through her arm as claws raked across it, but she didn't stop. The mark on her shoulder flared to life, glowing bright silver. The air seemed to crack around her, charged with energy that wasn't human. She raised her hand instinctively, and a pulse of light erupted from her skin, throwing the rogue backward. The entire hall froze for a single, impossible moment. Lucien turned toward her, eyes wide. "Ilara." The rogue wolves hesitated, confused by the sudden surge of power. Lucien seized the moment. "Now!" he roared. His warriors regrouped, driving the attackers back toward the doors. The air was thick with growls and the clash of blades. When the last of the rogues fled into the storm, silence fell heavy and raw. Ilara stood trembling, her hand still glowing faintly, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Lucien crossed the blood-slick floor and caught her by the shoulders. "You could have been killed," he growled, voice breaking with anger or fear. "Why didn't you stay where I told you?" She met his eyes, defiant. "Because I'm not helpless. Because I won't hide while others fight for me." For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then, without warning, he pulled her against him. His breath was warm against her ear as he whispered, "You're a fool, but you're mine." The words wrapped around her like fire and frost at once. She wanted to speak, to protest, but the storm outside drowned everything else. The hall was silent now, but the scent of blood lingered like a ghost. Ilara knelt beside Lucien, her hands trembling as she pressed them against the wound in his side. He'd taken the blow meant for her, steel glinting in the chaos, sinking deep before the last rogue had fled. "Stay still," she whispered, voice breaking. "Please, Lucien, don't move." His skin was cold, too pale beneath the torchlight. "It's nothing," he rasped, though blood pooled beneath his hand. "I've had worse." "You're lying," she said, panic edging her voice. "You're dying." Lucien's eyes met hers, sharp even through the pain. "Not if you keep talking instead of helping." Tears blurred her vision. "I don't know how." "Yes, you do," he said softly. "You've already done the impossible once. The power inside you. It's real. Use it." Ilara's throat tightened. "I don't know how to control it." "Then stop trying to control it," he murmured. "Just feel." She hesitated, her heart racing. The mark on her shoulder began to thrum, warm and alive. She closed her eyes, pressing her palms over his wound. Her breath came in shallow bursts as she reached for that strange pulse inside her, the one that had awakened during the attack. At first, nothing happened. Then a faint glow spread beneath her hands, silver and soft, like moonlight through mist. The warmth deepened, spreading from her chest to her fingertips. Lucien groaned, his body arching slightly, but she didn't pull away. She could feel it now, the bond between them alive, burning, undeniable. The light grew brighter. Pain shot through her arm, but she held on. Her vision filled with flashes, a wolf running through snow, the echo of Lucien's roar, the beat of two hearts sinking into one rhythm. The glow finally faded, leaving her dizzy and trembling. Lucien lay still for a moment, then drew a sharp breath. The wound had sealed completely, leaving only a faint scar. He blinked up at her, disbelief in his eyes. "You healed me." She pulled back, shaking. "I didn't mean to, it just happened." He sat up slowly, wincing. "No, it didn't just happen. You shared your life force with mine. That's an ancient ritual, Ilara, one only the bonded can perform." Her heart stumbled. "Bonded?" "It means our souls are linked," he said, his voice low and rough. "When you healed me, you gave me a part of yourself, and I gave you mine." She froze. "That's not possible." "It is," he said quietly. "And now, we're connected in ways neither of us can undo." Ilara's pulse pounded in her ears. "So what? If you die, I die." Lucien's lips curved faintly. "Let's hope we never test that theory." She wanted to laugh, to cry, to scream at him for being so calm while her world spun out of control. "You should have warned me." "I didn't have time," he said, meeting her gaze. "Would you have stopped?" Her breath caught. "No." His expression softened. "Then it was worth it." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was heavy, charged with something both terrifying and intimate. She could feel his heartbeat through the bond, steady now, strong, and the echo of her own pulse answering it. Finally, Lucien stood, reaching a hand toward her. "You've done enough for tonight. Rest." She hesitated, then placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and sure. The contact sent a shiver through her, like touching lightning that refused to burn. As he led her toward the stairway, she glanced at him. "What happens now?" Lucien paused. "Now," he said, "the council will fear you even more. And they should." Ilara didn't answer, but deep down she knew he was right. Whatever bond tied them together was no longer a secret. It was a power neither of them fully understood. And power, in a kingdom built on fear, was never without consequence. The fortress gates opened at dawn to a sight no one expected. A royal carriage, black and gold, rolled across the frozen bridge, escorted by armed guards in crimson cloaks. The symbol on their banners, the rising sun over a broken crown, was one Ilara knew too well. It was her family's crest. Word spread fast. By the time the carriage halted, the courtyard was full of soldiers, servants, and wolves alike, all whispering her name. Ilara stood at the top of the stairs beside Lucien, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. "Stay behind me," Lucien murmured. She nodded, though her feet felt nailed to the stone. The carriage door opened, and from it stepped a man she had tried to forget. Her father. Lord Aldrich of House Wynvale looked older than she remembered, but the pride in his eyes hadn't dimmed. His grey hair was slicked back, his fine cloak untouched by the cold. When his gaze found hers, it was sharp enough to wound. "So it's true," he said, voice echoing through the courtyard. "My daughter has taken shelter among beasts." Lucien's growl rumbled low, dangerous. "Watch your tongue." Aldrich turned to him without flinching. "And you must be the Alpha King. Tell me, your majesty, do you always collect strays?" The crowd tensed. Lucien took one step forward, his golden eyes flashing. "You've entered my territory uninvited. Speak your purpose before I decide your life isn't worth the insult." Aldrich's smirk didn't falter. "I've come to take back what belongs to me. The girl carries a curse, a blight that should have been purged at birth. She's not fit to live among humans, let alone rule beside wolves." Ilara's breath caught. "You think you can erase me again?" Her father's gaze hardened. "I spared you once, Ilara. Do not mistake mercy for love." Lucien's voice was cold steel. "She is under my protection." "Protection," Aldrich sneered, "or possession? Tell me, Alpha, does she know what she truly is?" Lucien's expression darkened. "Enough." But Ilara stepped forward, trembling with anger. "Then tell me, father, tell me what I am." He hesitated just for a heartbeat, and in that pause she saw fear, not of her but of the truth. "You are the child of sin," he said finally. "Your mother broke her vows. She loved a wolf, your wolf. You were born from that union, half human, half beast, a disgrace to both our kinds." The words struck her like thunder. For a moment she couldn't breathe. The memories she had long buried, her mother's secret glances toward the forest, the way she'd whispered Ilara's name with tears in her eyes, suddenly made sense. "You're lying," Ilara whispered. "I wish I were," Aldrich said softly, though his tone held no kindness. "But the mark on your skin proves what she did. You are the bridge between two worlds that should never have met. The curse lives through you." Lucien's fists clenched at his sides. "The moon doesn't curse what she blesses. You twist the truth to hide your shame." Aldrich laughed bitterly. "Believe what you want, but she's dangerous, King of Wolves. She carries the same blood that once doomed your kind. You think the moon favors her? She's the reason your ancestors burned." Gasps rippled through the watching crowd. Lucien's eyes glowed brighter, but before he could speak, Ilara's voice rose clear and steady despite the tears burning her throat. "Maybe you're right," she said. "Maybe I am what you fear, but I won't let you decide what that means anymore." Her father stared at her, stunned by her defiance. Lucien stepped closer, placing himself fully between them. "You've said enough," he warned. "Leave my lands before I forget diplomacy." Aldrich's smile returned, cold and cruel. "You can't protect her forever. Blood always calls to blood." He turned and walked back to his carriage, leaving silence in his wake. Ilara's hands trembled as she whispered, "He'll come back." Lucien didn't deny it. "Then we'll be ready." But even as he spoke, she couldn't shake the feeling that her father's visit was only the beginning, and that the truth of her blood had just changed everything. The night after her father's departure was eerily quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Ilara stood in the great hall, surrounded by the council, her pulse echoing in her ears. The air was thick with tension, heavy with judgment. "The pact demands a trial," Elder Morris announced, his voice booming across the chamber. "If she claims to bear the moon's favor, then let her prove it before the goddess herself." Lucien's jaw tightened. "This isn't necessary. She has done nothing to—" Morris raised a hand. "It is tradition, Your Majesty. When the blood of man and wolf mingle, it must be tested under the moon. If she passes, she is Luna by right. If she fails—" The silence finished the sentence for him. Ilara swallowed hard. "If I fail, I die." No one corrected her. Lucien's hand curled into a fist. "You would condemn her based on fear and superstition?" "She is half-blooded," Morris said sharply. "We cannot serve two masters, man and moon. If she is to lead beside you, she must prove which she belongs to." Ilara met Lucien's eyes, her voice steady. "I'll do it." His head snapped toward her. "Ilara, no. I have to," she said quietly. "If I run from this, I'll always be their curse. But if I face it, maybe I can be something else. Lucien searched her face for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he exhaled slowly, defeated. Very well, but you won't face it alone. Lucien. He shook his head. The bond ties us. If you fall, I fall with you. The council murmured in alarm, but Lucien's glare silenced them. That night, the fortress gathered beneath the open sky. The moon hung full and white, brighter than any Elara had ever seen. The snow reflected its light, making the world look like glass. In the center of the courtyard stood the ancient stone circle, the place where every Alpha and Luna had been tested for centuries. Elara stepped forward, the crowd parting before her. She could feel hundreds of eyes watching. Doubt, hope, fear. Lucien stood at the edge of the circle, his voice low but firm. Remember who you are. She nodded, though her heart was pounding. I don't know who that is yet. Then tonight, he said softly, you find out. The elders began to chant in the old tongue. The wind stirred, cold and electric. The moonlight thickened until it felt almost tangible, wrapping around her like silver mist. Her mark burned against her skin, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. Elara of no house, Morris declared. You stand before the moon. Prove your soul. A sudden pain tore through her chest, forcing her to her knees. The world shifted. The courtyard faded, replaced by a vast silver plain beneath a sky of endless stars. She was alone until a voice, soft and ancient, filled the air. Child of two worlds, it whispered. Why do you seek my blessing? Elara turned, searching for the source. Because I don't belong anywhere, she said. Because I want to. Belonging is not given, the voice replied. It is earned. Images flashed before her eyes, her father's rage, her mother's tears, the wolves' distrust, Lucien's quiet strength. She felt every scar, every doubt, every moment she'd wanted to disappear. I'm not perfect, she said, her voice shaking, but I've fought to survive. I've protected those who hated me. I don't want power, I want peace. The silence stretched, then softened. Then rise, Elara Wynvale, daughter of moon and man. You are both, and neither. You are balance. The light enveloped her, warm and blinding. When it faded, she was back in the courtyard, gasping. The crowd was silent. The mark on her shoulder now glowed like molten silver, brighter than before. Morris fell to one knee. The moon has chosen. Lucien moved to her side, pride and relief etched across his face. You did it. Elara met his gaze, her voice trembling but sure. No, she whispered. We did. And for the first time, the pack bowed, not to the king alone, but to the woman beside him. The fortress had never been so alive. For 3 days, the pack celebrated the outcome of the trial. Bells rang through the mountains, bonfires lit the frozen courtyards, and wolves from distant territories came to witness history, the crowning of a human-born Luna. Yet beneath the joy, tension hummed like a hidden current. Not everyone was ready to accept her. Elara stood before the mirror in her chamber, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the silver circlet that rested against her brow. The mark on her shoulder still glowed faintly, a reminder of the goddess's blessing. Outside, drums echoed, a heartbeat of the pack waiting for her. Lucien entered quietly. He wore his ceremonial armor, black and silver, the sigil of the moon wolf gleaming across his chest. When his eyes met hers, something unspoken passed between them. Pride, awe, and the shadow of something deeper. You look afraid, he said softly. She tried to smile. Maybe because half your council thinks I'll curse them before the night ends. Lucien moved closer. Let them think what they want. The moon has spoken. They can't deny what she's chosen. Elara met his gaze in the mirror. Do you believe it, Lucien? That I was chosen for this. He hesitated, then reached out, his fingers brushing the edge of her hair. I don't need to believe it, he said quietly. I know it. Her chest tightened at the warmth in his tone. Before she could respond, a knock echoed through the chamber. Garen entered, bowing slightly. It's time. The great hall blazed with light. Wolves filled every corner. Elders in fur-trimmed robes, warriors with their heads bowed, servants pressed close to see. At the center stood the twin thrones of Alpha and Luna, carved from moonstone and oak. As Lucien and Ilara stepped forward, the murmurs fell away. Elder Morris lifted the ceremonial blade, its surface shimmering under the torches. "Under the light of the moon," he declared, "we crown our king and Luna, two souls bound by fate, chosen to lead our kind." Lucien knelt first, his voice steady. "By blood and bond, I swear to protect this pack with my life." Then it was Ilara's turn. Her knees hit the stone and her voice trembled only once. "By the mark of the moon, I swear to guide with mercy and strength, to stand between darkness and light." Morris raised the blade toward the ceiling. "Then by ancient right, I name you, Lucien and Ilara, King and Luna of the Northern Pack." The hall erupted in howls and cheers, the sound shaking the walls. For the first time, Ilara didn't feel fear in their voices, only unity. She turned to Lucien, breathless, and he smiled, a real smile this time, unguarded and warm. But the moment shattered when a shout rose from the back of the hall. "Traitorous witch!" The crowd parted like a wave. Lady Seraphine stood there, her gown torn, her eyes burning with fury. "You think she's your savior? She's the reason the rogues came." "The reason your king almost died?" Lucien's guards moved instantly, but Ilara lifted a hand. "Let her speak." Seraphine's voice trembled with rage. "She's not your Luna. She's your doom. The moon didn't choose her, she cursed her." Lucien's growl rumbled through the hall. "Enough, Seraphine, you've gone too far." "You'll regret silencing me," Seraphine spat. "When the truth comes, it'll destroy you both." Before anyone could move, she lunged toward Ilara, a dagger flashing in her hand. Lucien moved faster, catching her wrist mid-swing. The blade clattered to the floor. Guards swarmed, dragging Seraphine away as she screamed, "You can't protect her forever." When the hall finally stilled, Lucien turned to Ilara. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "No. But she's right about one thing. The truth isn't finished with us." He looked at her, his hand still gripping hers. "Then we'll face it together." For the first time that night, she believed him. As the cheers resumed and the crowd bowed, Ilara stood beside her Alpha King, not as a stranger, not as a curse, but as his equal. Spring came late to the north. When the last snows melted, the mountains breathed again. Streams broke free, the forests stirred, and the scent of pine returned to the air. For the first time in generations, the pack lived without fear of war. Ilara stood on the castle balcony, watching sunlight glint off the valley below. Traders' caravans moved along the winding road, humans and wolves traveling together, something that would have been unthinkable months ago. She smiled faintly, the warmth of the morning brushing her face. Behind her, Lucien's voice broke the quiet. "You're up early again." She turned, finding him leaning against the doorway, still barefoot, his shirt unlaced. There was a softness to him now, something the Alpha King rarely showed. "I couldn't sleep," she admitted. "The world feels different." "It is," he said. "You made it so." Ilara shook her head. "We made it so. You fought for peace." "I fought for survival," Lucien replied. "You're the one who gave them something to believe in." She laughed under her breath. "You make it sound easy." "Nothing about you is easy," he said, stepping closer. "That's what makes you unforgettable." Her heart stumbled. There was still that spark between them, the unspoken bond neither dared name aloud. Lucien reached for her hand, but before he could speak, Garin appeared in the doorway. "Apologies, my king, my Luna. The council is ready." Lucien sighed. "Duty calls." Ilara squeezed his hand lightly. "Go, I'll join you soon." When he left, she lingered on the balcony a moment longer, listening to the quiet hum of life below. Peace had come, but peace was fragile, and deep down, she knew something always waited in its shadow. Later that evening, the great hall filled with music and laughter. The pack celebrated the first peace treaty between wolves and humans. Banners of silver and blue hung from the rafters, and the scent of roasted game filled the air. Ilara moved among the crowd, smiling at those who bowed to her, not out of fear, but respect. "Luna," an elderly healer said as she approached, "it's good to see the kingdom thriving again." "The moon must be pleased," Ilara smiled warmly. "Let's hope she stays that way." As the night deepened, Lucian found her near the hearth, a goblet of wine untouched in her hand. "You should be celebrating," he said. "I am," she replied. "Just quietly." He tilted his head. "You've been quiet a lot lately." She hesitated. "Sometimes peace feels too still. Like it's waiting to be broken." Lucian studied her face. "The past taught us to fear calm, but we can't live expecting the storm forever." "Maybe," she said softly. "But storms always come back." He stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "Then we'll face the next one together." Her chest warmed at the promise. Before the night ended, Lucien raised his goblet, addressing the crowd. "To our Luna," he said, his voice carrying easily through the hall, "to the woman who bridged two worlds and gave us back our future." Cheers erupted, echoing off the stone walls. Ilara felt her throat tighten, emotion catching her off guard. When Lucian looked at her, the world seemed to fall away, just the two of them bound by more than duty or destiny. After the celebration faded, they walked together through the courtyard. The snow had melted into patches of silver dew, and the moon hung low above the mountains. "This place used to feel like a prison," Ilara said quietly. "Now it feels like home." Lucian smiled faintly. "That's because it's yours now." They stopped near the old fountain where months ago she'd stood alone in fear. The water shimmered in the moonlight, and Ilara reached out to touch its surface. "Peace," she whispered, "feels almost like magic." Lucian's voice came soft behind her. "Maybe it is." As the wind carried the scent of spring through the courtyard, the Alpha King and his Luna stood side by side, no longer bound by fear but by the quiet promise of what they had built together. The first snow of winter returned quietly, falling like a memory over the mountains. Ilara walked through the forest path beyond the fortress walls, her cloak trailing through the frost. The trees whispered with the wind, soft and familiar, like old friends greeting her home. It had been a year since the night she was abandoned in that same snow. A year since the Alpha King found her half frozen and called her mine. Now, every step she took was a reminder of how far she had come. When she reached the clearing, she stopped. The air shimmered with moonlight, pure and silver. This was the place where everything had begun. The mark on her shoulder tingled faintly, warm even in the cold. Lucien's voice came from behind her. "You always come here when it snows." She turned, smiling as he approached. His hair caught the moonlight, his eyes glowing faintly gold. "It helps me remember," she said. "I was supposed to die here." He stopped beside her. "You didn't." "No," she whispered. "Because you found me." Lucien's expression softened. "No, Ilara, you found me." They stood in silence for a moment, the snow falling around them in quiet perfection. The world seemed to hold still. "When I first brought you back," he said, "I thought you'd be a burden. I thought you'd break this kingdom in two." She laughed softly. "And instead," he smiled. "You rebuilt it." Her heart swelled with emotion she could barely hold. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't stopped that night?" Lucien looked at her, eyes full of something deep and steady. "I don't wonder," he said, "because the moon doesn't make mistakes." Ilara's hand went to her stomach unconsciously, where new life stirred, a heartbeat beneath her own. "She didn't," she said quietly. Lucien's gaze followed her movement and his breath caught. "You can feel it." She nodded, only faintly. "But it's there." A rare smile curved his lips, breaking through the sternness that so often shielded him. "The moon gives and she tests," he murmured. "Perhaps this is her gift for all we've endured." Ilara took his hand and placed it over her heart. "Maybe it's her reminder that love doesn't always begin in peace, it begins in the storm." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "And we survived the storm." "We did," she whispered. The forest around them glowed with moonlight, each snowflake shimmering like tiny stars. Lucien drew her close, his arms wrapping around her as though anchoring her to the earth itself. "I used to hate the cold," she said softly. "And now? Now it feels like home." He smiled against her hair. "Then I've done something right." They stood together, the silence between them filled with everything words couldn't hold. Their past, their pain, their promise. Elara looked up at the sky, the moon bright and full. "Do you think she still watches us?" Lucien followed her gaze. "Always. But I don't think she judges anymore. Then what does she do?" He tilted his head, his voice low. "She waits for our child, to see if the blood of man and wolf can truly live in peace." Elara smiled, her hand still resting over his. "Then she'll see that it can, because this child will be born of both worlds, just like me." Lucien pressed a kiss to her forehead, his breath warm against her skin. "Then the future belongs to you both." The wind picked up, swirling snow through the clearing. Elara closed her eyes, feeling the peace of it settle deep within her. For the first time, the cold didn't feel cruel. It felt like a promise. When she opened her eyes again, the moonlight seemed to glow brighter, casting silver across their joined hands. "Let's go home," Lucien said quietly. She nodded, smiling through the tears she hadn't realized had fallen, and as they walked back through the snow, the moon watched from above, not with judgment, but with pride. For beneath her light, two souls had found each other, and from that bond, a new world would begin.